Good morning, everyone. I am Marvin Erum, and thank you for tuning in again today here on the Morning Coffee. As many of you might know that the war on Russia and Ukraine is expanding exponentially. Many people want to know whether it's going to stop or not. We've gathered the question of the people who are either terrified or worried about the war. We will answer these questions after this short break.
If you are given the chance to ask one question for the presidential aspirants, what is it?
My question will be, are you willing to provide everything this country needs?
Will you deepen our bonds with other countries so that we have allied forces in case something bad will happen?
What is your next goal after you've become the President of the Philippines?
If a war breaks down in our country, what would you do?
How will we resolve all of our nation's problems?
Do you have what it takes to become the next president?
And we are back. As I said earlier, the war between Russia and Ukraine are expanding exponentially. There are questions that many of the netizens of both countries wants to be answered. Today we are joined with Mr. Charles Nifas and Mr. Zairus Padua.
Good morning, and thank you for having me again on the talk show.
Good morning. I'm glad that you guys invited me here again, although this is our last talk show.
Yes, so guys, how's life been going for the both of you?
It's been quite well for me.
I'm doing pretty good, Mr. Aram.
Well, that's good to hear, but Mr. Padua, it's been a while since you've joined our talk show. How are you?
Yeah, well, after the last talk show, I've encountered problems which I had to deal with for the past few weeks, so I didn't get to join the last talk show, but I'm fine now.
Wow, Mr. Padua, I didn't know that you were having some troubles. I hope you're doing better now.
Yes, I'm doing better now.
That's good to hear, Mr. Padua. I also wish for you to be well. But before we start this talk show, I want to make something clear. This will be separated by sides where Mr. Charles Nivas will be taking part of Ukraine and Mr. Padua is taking part for Russia. So, are you guys ready?
I'm
Yeah,
ready.
Well, that's good to hear. So, we will start the talk show with a question for Mr. Nivas. Do you think that when the war happened, Ukraine was scared against Russia just because Russia is a big country?
I think not to the fact that even Ukraine president stayed and joined the front line just to defend their country, uh, their independence.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I also think that Ukraine was never actually got intimidated by the size of Russia. Rather, it's the complete opposite. Even the president of the Ukraine took the front lines. So, thank you, Mr. Nivas. For Mr. Padua, this question will be part of Russia. Do you think that the war will end just by talking and communicating?
yes, but I think they also need to make a move to end this war because words are just words. Nothing will happen to them by just talking and communicating each other. They need to make a deal and implement something from what is being discussed. And it depends on them how will they end this war peacefully. But like what I said earlier, they also need to make a move and that is important. If I were to be asked, they don't need to go further and end up in a war. Imagine that if President Vladimir Putin of Russia did not stop the war and still fighting right now with Ukraine, it can have a big impact to many countries, including us here in the Philippines. Because, as far as I know, Russia is one of the most powerful countries, and if the war is still going on right now, the world may freak out by declaring a World War III. So, I guess it is good for us that they ended up talking and negotiating with each other.
Well, for me, yes. I agree with the statement of Mr. Padua because with fair negotiations and fair talks, this can end very soon. And again, for Mr. Padua, The war in Ukraine looks like to be the one that Russian President Vladimir Putin cannot win on his preferred terms. It's also one of the war he cannot afford to lose. So if not, how will the war end?
I think it is better to make a deal and implement something that can help them to end this war peacefully. I am not really sure what President Vladimir Putin's plan, but I think he also want to end this war peacefully, and for me it is better for the Ukraine to negotiate with Russia as soon as possible because it is obvious for us that Ukraine has no much and has no enough power to fight Russia. I'm sorry, but this is what I see and observe when I'm watching the news about this issue. That is only my opinion, and I hope that Ukraine will not take this any longer. I also believe that Ukraine will not let the World War III happen.
Thank you, Mr. Padua. Well, for my opinion, how I think the war will end is completely on the president's hand. If ever they agreed on peace, then it should be good, but until then, it really depends on their decisions. So thank you, Mr. Padua. Now let's go back to the side of Ukraine, Mr. Nifas. When the war happened there, why do you think that no one helped Ukraine against Russia?
The question itself is flawed. I mean, do you really think that no one helped Ukraine? Sorry to burst your bubbles, but some article or news that circulated online, NATO and other states had been helping Ukraine ever since the war occurred between the two nations, providing support in arms, ammunition, medical supplies, and other vital military equipment necessary to help Ukraine fend for its country.
That was a great answer, Mr. Nifas. And if it wasn't
Oh,
obvious enough, that was really actual a trick question.
yeah. Oh, really? Thank God I'm paying attention.
Yeah, so it really shows that you really are keeping up with the happenings around the globe. So then for Mr. Padua, if USA is truly allied with Russia, does that mean that they will also be part of the war?
Yes, of course. USA can join the war as long as the Russia ask them to help because if you're allied with the country, you're responsible to help them if they are in trouble. But what I know is when the other country join in a war to help his ally, there is always a chance that the country that they are fighting with will also ask for help from their own allied country. And when that happens, it is possible that World War III will begin because the war would not only about two countries. It is allied by allied, so many countries will join and it is not possible that they will not declare World War III when that is finally happened.
Well, for me, it really depends on their choice. And if they only want to provide for the country, then there will be less trouble. But if they want to join and send troops of their own, I can only imagine what the allied nations of Ukraine will do. So thank you, Mr. Padua. So back to the part of Ukraine, Mr. Nifas. If you are on the place of the president of Ukraine, what would you do?
I think I would do the same way the president of Ukraine did and defend his own country. Because I could not sleep thinking that I'm sitting here peacefully while my fellow countrymen are fighting. Furthermore, if I'm a president of Ukraine, there would be an assassination attempt for my head and for my family. If the opportunity presents itself. So even if I evacuated in safety, there would be always a risk involved, including joining the front lines.
Yes, I totally agree with Mr. Nifas' statement because it is so terrifying to see that there's a bounty on your head, so you have no really other choice but to fight for your own country. Well, thank you for your great answers, and we'll be right back after this short break.
If you are given the chance to ask one question for the presidential aspirants, what is it?
My question will be, are you willing to provide everything this country needs?
Will you deepen our bonds with other countries so that we have allied forces in case something bad will happen?
What is your next goal after you've become the President of the Philippines?
If a war breaks down in our country, what would you do?
How will you resolve all of our nation's problems?
You have what it takes to become the next president.
And we are back. And this question will be for the both of you, Mr. Padua and Mr. Nifas. If you are both the president of the said nations and one of you made a move that harmed the other nation, what will be your response?
In that situation, I think I don't have any choice but to fight back because, as the president of the country, my job is to protect my people, and no one wants to harm people and make a lot of damages, especially when it happens to my own country or nation. This war can be solved through negotiating and not in a violent way. So they don't need to declare a war and harm my people. But if they keep fighting us, I will fight back even though my country has no match for the said nation. I will fight back just to serve my own country. But if fighting back will be the cause of the World War to happen, I think the last option that I can do is to surrender. Because even though I don't want to lose, I don't also want us to be the reason of World War III to happen.
That's a really great answer, Mr. Padua. Well, what about you, Mr. Nifas?
Naturally, I would first try to have peace talk with with the said nation and try to come up with a mutual agreement. If we fail to negotiate the proper and fair terms, then it is an inevitable that we would have to point knives to each other's throat. Uh, it is best to defend my country's safety and interests. That includes taking and taking the advantage if it's possible.
Yes, I totally agree with the both of you. Well, that was amazing, you two. Both really are keeping up with the updates, especially the war between Russia and Ukraine.
Yes, well, I mean, it's our trend topic all around the globe after all. So it's only natural for us to know about it.
How about you, Mr. Padua?
I'm also aware about it. I mean, everyone knows about this.
Yeah, I totally agree with the both of you. Well, that will be it for the talk show, guys. Really hope that you've enjoyed your stay.
Yep, I have enjoyed it.
Same goes here.
Wonderful. I'd like to thank you both again, Mr. Charles Nifas and Mr. Zairus Padua. And for our viewers, thank you for tuning in today here on the Morning Coffee.